Here we go! Here we go! Here we go!
We're gonna have a fiery Sterling today.
Well, no, you just have a big old air horn, and anytime a Packers fan tries to talk, you just hit the button and drown them out. Like, no, I can't hear you. Go Bears.
It's basically the la 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 la.
Yeah, exactly. Right? You don't even have to live there. You can do it from here. Just remote control everything. Yeah, I'm pissed off, man. Fuck the NFL at this point.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for yet another week. But first, Sterling, on this Saturday, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. We're deep into October. We got nice weather. We've had some excellent football to watch lately. Got a few really good games coming up this weekend, too. So, looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, this has been a pretty fun season for both of us. Maybe you a little bit more so than me, in terms of the fun ability. I think as the season has grown, I've been enjoying it a little bit more. Watching my quarterback develop every single week, I think has been really, really fun. And then, if you watched last week's podcast, I highly recommend, if you missed it, you go watch that one. It was a little bit of a longer one, but my God, was it ranty. And the thing that we ultimately ranted about kind of bit us in the, I'm not going to say bit us in the ass, but it was a situation of where we ranted a ton about the decision to start Russell Wilson over Justin Fields for the Pittsburgh Steelers last week at quarterback. And one of the things that we talked about is we kind of looked at it going like, there's three ways this is really going to go. And it's going to be Russell Wilson is going to be really bad. He's just going to be subpar, or he's going to be really good. And you as a Steelers fan, I want your opinion on how you think he ultimately played that game.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as you said, like it's been a fun season, but that last 10-day stretch was really stressful and awkward because nobody felt like that move should be made except for Mike Tomlin. You know, it wasn't just us that was ranting about it or, complaining, giving Tomlin shit, whatever it may be, but ultimately you look at the end result, and I think that's why Mike Tomlin had a shit-eating grin on his face when he got up to that podium for the Tuesday press conference like he usually does, because he's like, yeah, you all doubted me, and look what happened. Was Russell Wilson great? No, like he wasn't Hall of Fame level or anything like that, but it was a better product than what Justin Fields had been providing up to this point in the season. He was moving the ball around better. He was hitting George Pickens on some of those deep routes. And ultimately, he was able to throw the ball for touchdowns to wide receivers, which is a huge change for this team. We haven't seen a lot of that in the last few years. It's been, even this season alone, we get to the red zone and you go, okay, well, he's either going to throw it to a tight end or he's going to run it himself, talking about Justin Fields. I kind of expected last week to be the same. We would get to the red zone and we would see like a package happen where Russell Wilson comes out and Justin Fields comes in so he can still run it in. But ultimately, Mike Tomlin was like, no, we are giving this first game fully, wholly to Russell Wilson. They let him sneak it in for a quarterback touchdown. They let him throw the ball in the red zone, 4 passing touchdowns, 1 to George Pickens, 1 to Van Jefferson. I mean, we all criticized him for making that change. He wasn't lights out at quarterback, but he was a better option. He looked better than Justin Fields did at that quarterback, especially pre-snap. The ability to get up to the line and start changing plays, calling audibles, moving guys around, switching protections, that is something that Justin Fields is sorely lacking. And that, for that reason alone, I look at it and I go, you ride with Russell Wilson now, and you give Justin Fields a headset so he can hear the process that Russell Wilson is going through, and he can figure out a way to start doing that himself. Because I can't remember, just off the top of my head, a time seeing Justin Fields get to the line and then start making changes. He basically gets the call, calls it in the huddle, and then runs that play as it is. He doesn't make any changes, and that has to change, hands down, if he's going to be the quarterback of the future here. Simple as that. He has to find that out. And that's not just here. If he's going to be the quarterback of the future anywhere in this league, you need to find a way to read defenses pre-snap and make adjustments, or you're not going to succeed.
Mhm. I 100% agree with you. And I never saw Justin Fields making changes at the line of scrimmage when he was a Bears quarterback. That's why, as a Bears fan, watching Caleb Williams basically be Peyton Manning behind the offensive line, basically every other play going, okay, this isn't going to work, I'm going to change it. It's really shocking thing to see. And for both of us, we haven't seen that in a long time. Because shouldn't see it with Fields. I didn't see it with Trubisky. Last quarterback that I saw doing it was Jay Cutler. So it's been a while for me. And, for you, last guy that you saw doing that was Big Ben. But so you've been a little bit less in that time. But I know watching last week, a lot of people would say that I am very anti against Russell Wilson. And I still am. I will sit back and I will say Russell Wilson played a very good game from the outside. It was almost kind of like I was almost hoping the Steelers would fail, and I said it multiple times last week. I hoped the Steelers would fail in that game because of that move, because of how much I disagreed with it. And we did see Wilson making some changes. I still think Fields should be the starting quarterback, because if you're going to picture this guy as your starting QB and he's played in the season so far and he's done well and he's gotten better. Now, has he made excellent strides like, let's say, the Bears have seen with Caleb Williams? No, but Fields has shown improvement with the Steelers each week. I will give Wilson the props that he made adjustments at the line. He was able to hit George Pickens. I think with this game, all that it really confirmed to me was George Pickens. If you can throw him the 50-50 ball, he will likely win that more times than not. But I also kind of looked at that one. That's pretty much only George Pickens. That's the only thing George Pickens can really do, it seems like. If you can get him the 50-50 ball, he's good. But in almost every other instance, hasn't been that kind of way.
Well, I think
know what I mean?
I think a big reason for that is because he is often so tightly covered. He was never a great route runner, so he's not going to shake a guy off and then run across the middle of the field. That was never his thing. You see it. He's good at the 50-50 ball because he had to get good at it, because he's covered. He's always got a guy grabbing his jersey, trying to hold an arm down while he's making a catch. And so that is one of the biggest reasons why we've been saying all offseason, all preseason, that the Steelers need to make a move for another wide receiver, one that can run those routes, one that can shake off defenders and get open over the middle of the field. That is what is lacking for this team right now. Because you do that, and you're guaranteeing that George Pickens is going to have a lot more one-on-one opportunities for those 50-50 balls. And a big difference, though, is Russell Wilson, even at his advanced age, clearly has that better accuracy on those deep balls to be able to place it exactly where it needs to be for George Pickens to make those plays. Whereas Justin Fields is doing it and Pickens is having to try and adjust and reach back or reach awkwardly. It doesn't look as good. With those Russell Wilson balls, it's literally just turn around, hold the other guy off, and catch it with right in the breadbasket.
Russell
You don't
Wilson
have
is
to
one of
reach
the best
all the way back
50-50
over
ball
here.
throwers in the entire NFL. Like that was always his calling card. Even in Seattle, he is one of the best 50-50 throwers in the entire league. And that works well with George Pickens.
It does.
But there's going to be a game for the Steelers where there's going to be a corner that is going to say, just because you're really good at the 50-50 balls doesn't mean you're going to beat me. And I've been saying this all week, and I've been saying it to you, that this Steelers game is kind of like the Bears games the last few weeks, of where you praise the Steelers for this win. you have to, because a win is a win in the NFL, and wins are a very hard thing to get. But the Jets are just such a broken team, man. And this Giants game, we both sat back and went, like, this isn't going to be much of a competition for the Steelers.
Nope.
For the Steelers to properly know who their guy is going to be, it's going to be when you get past that Giants game, when after you come back from the bye, when you go through that gauntlet, then we're going to start to figure out what the Steelers are truly going to be. And if it's just going to be that same situation of just, oh, hey, we're going to be good enough to get to the wild card and then we're going to get bounced immediately, or is we're going to see something different. So for right now, I will stop being more negative towards the Steelers until we get to that point, but I'm also not going to praise them. It's same thing with my
No.
Bears. Same thing with my Bears, where I've been most of the year, I'm not going to praise them, and I'm going to be probably a little bit more negative towards them. But yeah, it's...
No, and I get that. I even said that in my week 7 review video earlier in this week. Like, until I see this Steelers game play that 10-day stretch against the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, we won't truly know whether this team is going to be a wild card losing team or if they're going to be able to finally win a playoff game. But one thing you said was, at some point, George Pickens is going to go up against a corner that is really good and is going to be able to go, oh, you're not going to be able to beat me on this 50-50 ball. I would argue, as broken as that Jets team is, last week was the best cornerback that he's going to face for the rest of the year in Sauce Gardner.
He was also banged up, though.
He was banged up, but I mean, Washington does not have a good cornerback. The Bengals don't have great cornerbacks. The Browns, by the time we get there, I have a feeling Ward will be traded, so they aren't going to have great cornerbacks. The Ravens don't have great corners. Neither really do the Eagles or the Chiefs. Both have been struggling in their secondaries. So
yeah, I can give you that. Yeah, you know what?
Right,
yeah.
at this point, George Pickens likely has faced his toughest challenges, and I think that's why he's so excited going forward. And he's ecstatic to have Russell Wilson there because he knows he's going to get a lot of 50-50 ball opportunities. And he's, we've discussed it. When it's George Pickens in a 50-50 ball, it's more like 80-20.
Yeah.
He's going to come down with that more often than not. And so that is promising, and that's going to open up so many more opportunities in the run game for this team, which I've said week in and week out when I do my review videos, that one of the 3 keys for this Steelers team to win every week is 100 yards rushing the ball. And that's just through the running back room, not your quarterback. Justin Fields' rushing numbers cannot count towards that total. It needs to be Najee Harris. It needs to be Jalen Warren. It needs to be Patterson. It needs to be those guys rushing for over 100 yards combined. And having that 50-50 ball available is going to be so fundamental to opening up those opportunities for Najee Harris.
I agree with you. Like I said, for me, I'm not going to be overly critical on the Steelers for the next little bit, like I have been, particularly through the off season or through the beginning portion of the season. But I'm also not going to give them praise. Again, similar to what I'm doing with the Bears, where it's like, you need to show me that you can do this against your own division, which again is the best division in football. And if you can do that, then I'll start singing some praise. But until then, I'm just going to be the depressed Bears fan that I've always been. And
no, that's fair, man.
Yeah.
I get that 100%. And I've said that to several people this week as well. It's like, until those December games hit, I'm not ready to say, other than in a joking manner to piss people off, because I do that. I'm not going to say Steelers to the Super Bowl, because until I see those 3 games, but if they win those and they win those convincingly, then we're going to need to seriously start having conversations about maybe this Steelers team, maybe this Russell Wilson signing was actually a sneaky good thing that put them back on the map in the playoff picture. But we won't know for another 8 weeks.
That's a long time away for sure.
Yeah.
But again, last week we also talked about some trade stuff that we thought for our teams going throughout this week. But there was a trade this week that I would say I'm a little bit shocked with because of some of the other news that was also available that last week. Again, we kind of talked about the idea of Cooper Cup potentially being available, and my ultimate thoughts were Cooper Cup is not going to get traded at the deadline. I think having him back healthy is going to be a situation of where the Rams are going to go, we have Cooper Cup back. He's only played a game and a half. We need to see what he's going to be truly like in this offense. And then I didn't expect Puka Nacua to also come back. And we saw that Rams offense looked like what we expected that Rams offense to look like. And it just be absolute killer against one of the most scary defenses in the NFL. Not the best defense, one of the scariest defenses in the NFL. And it really was a situation where I looked at that and went, that just confirms it to me, is that the Rams will not trade Cooper Cup until the offseason. And there was rumors this week starting on Monday morning where it was, well, the Rams have actually started telling teams that they're willing to listen to trade offers for Cooper Cup, which I thought was strange. But the second that both of us heard that news, it was, okay, Kansas City, here you go.
Well, and it did make sense at that point. That was a good time to put that feeler out because they knew at that time probably that Cup and Nacua were playing on Thursday. And so they went into that going, let's see what's out there for Cooper Cup. Because I still believe if on Thursday, if the Rams lost that game Thursday night and they were sitting at 1-5, that is the point where they go, okay, yes, we are trading him. Because 1-5 in that division, you're then looking at it going, we're not
They would
climbing
have
up.
been 2-5.
2-5, sorry.
Yeah.
Either way, that's still, you're too far out at that point. That would have been the decider. But the fact that they played so well, everything was clicking, everything was rolling. It looked like they didn't miss a beat from week 1 to week 7.
Yeah.
Or week 8, I guess. Sorry, because it was the start of week 8. And so at that point, I think that trade bait was pulled right away.
Yes.
They won that game and they went, okay, never mind, we're not trading him. Luckily, because the Chiefs did make a call for Cooper Cup. They did have discussions, but I guess the Chiefs were the one team that the Rams looked at, Sean McVay looked at, and they were like, well, yeah, I know we said a second round pick, but for you guys, it's a first. And that was what I heard ultimately the reason that the Chiefs started looking elsewhere for a cheaper option because they said, no, we're not willing to trade a first round pick away to fill this gap at wide receiver that we have. A second rounder we were willing, but the asking price for the Chiefs was too steep in a Cooper Cup trade.
Yeah. I look at it, if I'm the Chiefs and I go, a team says to me, we're looking for a first round pick from you. I go, okay, so you want the 32nd overall pick. And if I'm the Chiefs, I look at that and I go, okay, have the 32nd overall pick. I can't, and again, we're all pretty much just kind of delaying this process to basically just say the Chiefs traded for DeAndre Hopkins. And if you're an NFL fan, you knew that trade happened, and it was for a conditional 5th round pick. Now, one of the things that you talked about is you didn't want your Steelers to trade for DeAndre Hopkins because there was some injury concerns, and he's going to need surgery at the end of the year. That's why I was kind of a little bit confused on why the Chiefs ultimately made this trade, because yes, he's going to be better, and the Chiefs have a plethora of injuries at the wide receiver spot. It is not a good situation for them whatsoever. But I go, you also have a guy who's 32 years old, who has already been banged up throughout this season, who's going to need surgery at the end of the year. He's going to be better, for sure. He's going to give Mahomes a very, very good weapon to throw to. He's probably going to look fairly good, but I just look at it and go, man, I still would have traded that first round pick for Cooper Cup.
I mean, I get where they're coming from, not wanting to spend that first, and that's just it. If the Rams had lost, I still think the Chiefs would be calling back this week, going, "So, do you want to reconsider that?" You know, and they might have considered it further, giving up that first round pick. But I think the difference between my Steelers trading for DeAndre Hopkins and the Chiefs trading for DeAndre Hopkins is in Pittsburgh, he would have been coming in and likely becoming a focal point of the offense, which a guy at 32 with some injury concerns, that's not what you wanted. Because whoever we bring in is going to become a focal point to take pressure off of George Pickens, Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth. That's not a good fit. Whereas in the Chiefs, he can go in there and go, well, I don't have to be the number one. They've got a decent running game. They've got a decent tight end, and they've got the best quarterback. And head and shoulders, they have the best coach. And so that's, I think, a better fit there because DeAndre Hopkins is like, I'm not going to have to catch the ball 6 or 7 times. I don't have to have 10 targets a game. I only need 3 targets a game. I need to gain 40 to 60 yards, maybe get a touchdown in the red zone.
Yeah.
That's all Hopkins has to do with the Chiefs. With the Steelers, he would have to be a workhorse, and so it wouldn't have made a good fit. For the Chiefs, that was, I think, a great move because it does. It plugs a hole temporarily as Xavier Worthy continues to grow, as we wait and see if any other wide receiver options become available. Juju Smith-Schuster isn't out long-term either, and he has been good for the Chiefs. Like, we made fun of him all in the offseason and when he was with the Patriots about how bad he was, but he was with the Patriots. So, yeah, he's going to be bad. Now, he's looking better with the Chiefs. So, this was a good move for them. I still think they're likely going to be shopping around for other options, probably something that they can get for a second or third rounder, because the last few years, the Chiefs are able to hit on their first round picks.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I think it's more valuable, because when you're hitting on a first round pick and it's the 31st or 32nd pick, that means you're doing a good job. And why give it up for a rental player when you can get a guy who you're like, okay, now we've got him for 4 years.
Oh, you're saying this to the guy who's always conservative with draft picks and is always saying that you shouldn't trade a first round pick if you can always draft a great player. Like, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But this is also a team that is 6-0 right now, is still the Super Bowl favorite. And it's one of those things of going, if you're going to trade a first round pick away for a guy like Cooper Kupp, that's pretty much just going to make it so that Xavier Worthy is going to be able to get open down the field and do all this stuff. Like, this is one of those moves where I go, if you are the Kansas City Chiefs, you're trying to make history this year. Like, this point, you're not going to be losing Mahomes next season. Yep. You can afford to have a season or two after this year of having a little bit worse stuff because you went out for a three-peat, something that has never been done in the NFL. And I just sit back and I go, these are the times when you make those decisions. But yeah, like I understand the conservatism, and DeAndre Hopkins is there. I still like the move for DeAndre Hopkins because I still think that opens up Xavier Worthy and allows him to be that. And I think if Rashee Rice can get back healthy at the end of the year, I don't know if he's going to, but if he can come back for the playoffs, that's a scary wide receiving core.
Yeah. And as I said, I don't think the Chiefs were all out on giving a first for Kupp. It was just, they knew it wasn't going to happen this week anyway.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I think that's when they went, okay, who else is out there? Who else can we get for cheaper than that? Because we know we're not getting Kupp this week for that first. So we can sort of sit back, see what other options are out there. If the Rams lose, then they might get a little more desperate next week and not ask for our first anymore. But if they do, at that point, we might be more willing to give that if we weren't able to find any other options. So I don't think it was that they were saying, no, we're not at any point trading that first. I think it was just we
need to wait a week.
It's not going to happen this week anyway, so no for now is what it was.
Yep. No, I hear you. It's a lot of these trade proposals that are coming out. Again, if you heard us talk last week, we know that for your Steelers, it was Mike Williams and Chris Olave. Highly recommend going and watching that first part before we get into the really long, ranty stuff. We did actually have a pretty good discussion about that. And yeah, there's a lot of wide receivers that are going to be available for trade this year. 2 on the Carolina Panthers, which again, we talk about the Panthers right now of not really having much of anything. But, Deontay Johnson, he basically all out said at the end of last week, he's like, for the love of God, trade me. I don't want to be here, without saying that. And the kind of joke was between me and you this week was, Steelers? Maybe send like a
right?
7th round pick for Deontay Johnson, and you basically get Deontay Jackson for a 7th round pick at that point. Because
Yep.
what was it, just basically a player swap for that pick, or was
It,
there
it
an
was it
additional?
was uh it was Deontay Johnson to the Panthers for Dante Jackson and a sixth is
Okay,
what it was.
so you
And so
gain,
we would have gotten Dante Jackson and a 6th round pick for a 7th round pick is what it would end up being.
yeah,
You know, but at this point, I would even say, hey, do you guys want your 6th round pick back? Here you go.
yeah, to,
All
with
right, here you
yeah,
go. Give us DJ back because he'll fit in quickly. So that would be an addition I would not balk at for sure. Because he would be an upgrade in that wide receiver room in Pittsburgh. But there's other options
there's
out there.
better guys
I
out there.
still like that Chris Olave option, especially if the Saints continue to lose this way. I think it becomes more and more plausible as we get closer to the deadline.
Yeah.
As you pointed out last week, it's more likely an off-season acquisition, an off-season move that happens. But I think for Pittsburgh, once we get to the off-season, they're going to look at that and go, well, now we don't want to give you a first for him
We
because
can
the
just use
season's
that first
over.
round pick on a wide receiver.
Exactly.
I would just say with that strategy though is let's say the Steelers end up with like the 23rd pick, which
Yeah,
is very much where they've
very
kind of
likely.
been like that. That's kind of where they're projected to be at
Hmm.
this point. We don't know if there's going to be a wide receiver at that point that is going to meet that caliber. And I will always go, I would be willing to trade for a known commodity as opposed to an unknown commodity. Because again, at that point,
Hmm.
there could be 4 wide receivers already gone, and then the 5th guy is kind of looking like he should be projected into that 40 range as opposed to that 23 range. And do you want to overdraft? And I just go, like, it's almost seems like the NFL right now, one of the big differences that is happening is it's almost better to allow someone else to develop the wide receiver and then wait 3 years and then trade for him,
Yep.
because that's kind of shown that it can really, really work. Now, granted, we talk about a bunch of players not getting traded in these sort of situations, but the Bears have certainly used it. The Bills used it with Stephon Diggs. We saw the Eagles
Hmm.
use it with A.J. Brown. Bears obviously using DJ Moore, and I know that wasn't exactly after 3 years, but they still got a number one receiver. And like I still love Chris Olave to the Steelers because of that Justin Fields connection and them going back and them being good friends. But yeah, it is there's a lot of receivers out there. Again, Adam Thielen is potentially being available. There's a handful
Hmm.
of running backs that are all being talked about. The Panthers could trade Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Chuba Hubbard, Bryce Young. Like they're
Yep.
basically just saying we're willing to give everyone away, and even then they still might only have the 2nd pick this year, which would be hilarious. They might even only have the 3rd pick this year, which would be hilarious.
Yep.
I would still like them to have the 1st overall pick because then my Bears, we get the 33rd pick, and that just makes that a lot better. But there's this trade deadline. I read something this week where someone said people need to stop treating the NFL deadline like it's going to be the NBA trade deadline. And I kind of looked at that and I went, I understand where you're coming from, but the NFL trade deadline has been so much more active over these last couple years. Like we've been seeing many more trades. Like if this was 5
Hmm.
years ago, I would go we're maybe going to see 2 trades and we're not going to see anyone terribly great. It's just going to kind of be like just your average kind of players, but we could see some superstars get traded.
Yeah.
If the Browns get absolutely destroyed, there's no reason to say that Miles Garrett, Wyatt Teller, just as I look at the rest of their depth chart, like here are the players that on the Browns we could genuinely see get traded this week. We could see Wyatt Teller get traded on the offensive line. I don't think there's anyone else on the offense that would be really worth trading. Maybe Nick Chubb if another team feels like they're comfortable with that. But Miles Garrett, Zadarius Smith has been in a lot of rumors this week. Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Greg Newsome II. Like these are all guys that can fetch some decent prices for draft capital.
Hmm.
Like
I would
that's
say
just
on
the
the offense,
Browns.
even Jerry Judy.
Yeah,
I know they just Sign them to the, but they're in fire sale mode. They don't know who their quarterback's going to be going forward. That like it's at a point where they're like, we might as well start fresh. I don't think anybody in Cleveland is off the table at this trade deadline.
Totally fair. And you look at, for instance, the Las Vegas Raiders. We could see Max Crosby get traded. I know this week he ultimately came out and said, like, I don't want to leave. I want to stay a Raider for the rest of my career. I basically had to turn off my phone because, too many people are hitting me up and saying, like, oh, when are you coming to the Lions, or when are you coming to the Bears, or this,
Yeah.
and that. Like, those apparently have been the two fan bases that have been messaging him saying, please come to our team. But, like, if you're the Raiders, going out and getting picks for Max Crosby, that is not a bad situation to be in. And like you can just basically look at the Jets, for instance. If they continue to lose, they could be in a mode of where if they lose badly enough this week, they could say, okay, it's time to move on from some people. I doubt that would happen because this is the Jets we're talking about here, but Jacksonville, they have players that can be traded away. Again, we talked about Cam Robinson, Brandon Sheriff. Those are two guys that could potentially go. Christian Kirk definitely could be a possibility. Josh Hines Allen, he could be a guy that gets traded away. Trayvon Walker could be another guy. There is going to be so many players that are up for grabs and available to trade for this year.
Oh yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I do understand where people are coming from. It's never as intense as the NBA trade deadline or the NHL trade deadline because you don't see as many pieces getting moved, obviously.
Yep.
But the last few years, there have been bigger splashes. The difference with the NFL trade deadline is it's not just that one day.
No, it
That's the
happens the
thing.
week. It happens basically throughout that entire week.
And even the week before, it's like the 2 weeks leading up to that deadline is really what the NFL trade deadline is. We've already seen it with Amari Cooper and Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins. And that's why the NFL deadline isn't as splashy on the day because some of those big names already get moved earlier. Why wait 2 more weeks, 2 more games where a guy could potentially get injured when you've got the deal in place now? Whereas with some of those other leagues, because there's so many games, you just sit him for a couple games and it doesn't really affect anything. You can't really sit a guy in the NFL for 2 games because that right there is like 12% of the season.
Yeah, well, and NFL is also a big situation where you need guys in there sooner rather than later, because
hmm
if you do have to sit one of those players, you only want to do it for a game because at the NHL, let's say if you trade for a center, you can place him into your second line and you don't need to even sit him. And same thing with the NBA. You can just insert him into your lineup because you don't have complex plays being drawn up. Yes, I know those sports do have plays that are out there and you have to
hmm
learn, but it's one of those things where you can basically just say, if we're trading for you, like let's say the Celtics traded for LeBron James. I'm not
hmm
saying that that's going to happen, but let's
No.
just say like that happens. You're not looking at LeBron James going, "Yeah, we know we just traded for you, but we have to sit you for these next few games because you have to learn our system." It's like, "No, you're putting fucking LeBron James out there." Well, while
Yeah.
in the NFL, it's like, "Okay, like we know we just traded for you on a Tuesday, like with Devonte Adams, but it's like okay, like you were gonna have like you are really lucky that you already know the offensive coordinator, you know the quarterback, and so you can basically just go off vibes with that one." But we see it often where if a player gets in there
Well,
kind of midweek, they don't end up playing that week.
I mean, the other trade we saw last week, we saw that with Amari Cooper. There was a clip going around after that Bills game last week where Josh Allen gets to the line and he calls an audible specifically for Amari Cooper. And Cooper's like, "What? What?" And he
Yeah,
looks over at Keon Coleman, and Coleman's like, "Yeah, just run, just straight up the field, just go."
yeah.
And that's what it is. It's a situation where he didn't know the audible necessarily, but his teammate was able to clarify it for him, so he got that touchdown.
Yeah, and those are things that we often see at this point. And a team that I don't think we've necessarily been talking about as much about being potentially active in the trade deadline is now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because losing Chris Godwin, losing Mike
hmm
Evans. Now, I know Mike Evans isn't going to be out for more than 3 weeks, but we're not talking about a young man in Mike Evans anymore. We could say 3 weeks, but we saw him rush back from that injury already, and he got just even that much more hurt.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be shocked to see if the Buccaneers say, we're going to put you out for 5 weeks, old man, because again, you're 32 years old. You can't recover fast, and you play a position where you get hit a lot. So we could potentially see like a Mike Evans, or not Mike Evans, Mike Williams go to, the Bucks, because Baker Mayfield has been fantastic this year. And if you give him a few more weapons, guess what? He's going to continue to be fantastic, and they're going to win that division.
Right? A Mike Williams or a Christian Kirk would be a good fit over there for sure. And there's another guy that we haven't talked about at all for this trade deadline, but we saw the team start selling this week with DeAndre Hopkins going, and that's Calvin Ridley. I know he signed a longer term contract with the Titans, but obviously they're looking at it now going, well, we're going to have to make some changes. Is a 30-year-old Calvin Ridley really going to be in our plans to be the future? I don't know if he is. So that is one that I think we could see a team that's looking for a longer term investment as opposed to just a rental to get through the season. And that would be a good option for the Bucks because we know Godwin's not going to be back. And there's a potential that Mike Evans could still retire at the end of the year. So, or who knows, Chris Godwin might not be able to get back to football form after that ankle injury. So a guy like Ridley you bring in and you go, okay, well, we've got a guy for 2 more seasons after this as well. So that's another one we haven't talked about that could be on the move, I think. And that's the Bucks, the Chiefs, the Steelers. Any of those teams could be interested in a guy like Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley is one of those guys that has all the hallmarks of, we're going to trade this guy in the offseason type situation, because it really is one of those things where, again, trading away DeAndre Hopkins, you clearly made the move of like, oh, we're going to go into a rebuild mode. Again, the Titans, they need a quarterback because Mason Rudolph's not going to be the guy. It's clear Will Levis isn't going to be the guy. So their focus this offseason is going to be quarterback. And I think you would rather have at least one, at least experienced guy. Again, having Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd. Neither of these guys are top tier wide receivers in the NFL, but they're experienced, and I would rather keep those guys even if they're going to be a little bit more expensive, because again, let's say you bring in Cam Ward from Miami, you would want him to at least throw to some of those guys as opposed to trading away Calvin Ridley and going, we have what is our third wide receiver in Tyler Boyd, who's older, and he's now even a year older than what he was last year, and he's kind of not been that great this season. That's going to be your number one wide receiver to throw the ball to this year. And me, I always want my quarterbacks to be put in the best situation possible as a rookie. And so I think you're probably likely going to keep these guys for the off season until the off season.
100%. But I would just say that, I would like to say we're a little bit smarter when it comes to that sort of thing than the Titans front office has been, or the Panthers front office has been. I could see those teams making those decisions going, fuck it, we're not gonna roll with any wide receivers, we're just gonna find the local Dave from Subway and he's gonna be our wide receiver for the rest of the year. Those organizations make head scratching moves all the time.
Yeah.
And so that is why I wanted to bring up Calvin Ridley, because I was like, he's talked about it, but I could see the Titans making a dumb move like that and leaving themselves with just Tyler Boyd.
Totally. And I don't even know if Tyler Boyd is even on contract past this season anyways. So, but one of the other teams that I want to talk about potentially being in a situation where we could see them making a big time trade, and that is the Miami Dolphins. We know Tua's supposedly coming back this week. If Tua gets hurt this week, do we see the Dolphins look at Justin Fields or Bryce Young, some of these types of guys that are clearly going to potentially be talked about in a serious term? Because again, if Russell Wilson goes out there and has let's be honest here, Russell Wilson is likely going to go out there and show another good week against the Giants. I think that's fairly comfortable to say that. And at that point, it would be hard to move on and go back to Justin Fields at that point, especially coming off the bye and going into that week number 9 and going into that bye week. You just sit back and say, like, hey, Miami's offering us a 3rd round pick for Justin Fields. That's more than what we spent on Justin Fields. So, yeah, ultimately, we're going to take that deal and just ride with Russ the rest of the year and then kind of figure it out going into the offseason because and again, it could be a situation of where the Dolphins look at the Panthers and go, we'll give you a 6th for Bryce Young, or we'll give you a 5th. Maybe they just say, fuck it, we'll give you a 3rd round pick for Bryce Young because Tua's brain turned to literal mush. And so, like, we need a new quarterback. And that's a genuine conversation we're going to have because, and one of the other things that Tua I want to talk about is, again, we all know my position. I think he should have retired after that last concussion. I'm not going to tell a player he should or shouldn't, but just from dealing with my own concussion injuries in sport and knowing what that kind of does to you, I just look at him and go, you should have retired. But him also saying, I'm not going to wear a Guardian cap as well, I just look and go, man, like, you're wearing the safest helmet already for quarterbacks in terms of taking hits. What would be the risk of just adding that little bit of protection?
Right.
I don't
And
fully get it.
honestly, I think what we're going to see is if Tua comes back and suffers another concussion at any point throughout this season, really, we may see the NFL approach the NFLPA and go, look, guys, we want to institute a rule where if a guy has had a concussion, the Guardian cap has to become mandatory now.
Yeah.
And I really think that'll be a discussion that the league and the Players Association end up having if this does happen to Tua again.
Well, I think at that point, the NFL should look at Tua if he gets another concussion this season or just in general throughout his career. They look at the NFLPA and say, listen, guys, we are mandating that he's not playing anymore because we can't have a death on the field on our hands because we keep allowing this guy to continue to go back out there. Again, athletes, they're stubborn people. When I had my concussion, I wanted to continue to go back to boxing. I was like, I'm going to take a month off, see how I feel. And then if I'm still a little bit concussy, then I'll wait another few weeks. And then it just didn't get better. So eventually I kind of had to have that hard emotional talk with myself and go, it's time to retire, dummy, because it's been 2 years and your brain's still mashed potatoes at this point. So maybe let's not do this. And with Tua, we have seen the concussions be really, really bad, where it's not where he stands up and he's just a little bit wobbly. It's been him on the ground with his body basically going in every opposite direction because his body is seizing up because it doesn't know what to do because its brain got damaged. And that's been the last 3 concussions we've seen from Tua. Mm-hmm. Sure, he was managed to stay healthy the entire year last year, but like, it's just getting to a point where, like, man, just the NFL is going to have to step in at some point and just kind of go, not doing it anymore.
Yep. Well, exactly. And I mean, for the Dolphins organization, like, obviously everybody hopes it doesn't happen at all.
Yep.
But for the Dolphins, they got to go, well, if it's going to happen, please let it happen before the deadline so we can call about guys like Bryce Young and Justin Fields and some of the other options around the league, because I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility that the Steelers are shopping Justin Fields around right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked either.
Right? They got to be looking at it and going, well, either you sign the contract that we're offering you, because I'm sure they've got one on the table for Justin Fields already. Mm-hmm. It's probably not super favorable. It's probably less than what Daniel Jones is making in a year.
Oh, but 100% will be less than what Daniel Jones
Jones and so that's a situation where they're like, either you sign this or we're going to be thinking about trading you and figuring our quarterback situation out in the offseason.
When it comes to Justin Fields' contract, I would be shocked if he's making more than $10 million a season.
Like, I mean,
I would be.
He would be the backup then at that point.
I look at it like this and go, the reason why I don't think he would be making much more than $10 million a year is because he would probably be signing a 3-year contract, $30 million, and with a plethora of performance bonuses in there as well. Like if you hit
Yeah.
this, like that is likely what it will be, and it will be like, listen, you had 3 years in Chicago where you didn't show that you were the guy. You had this year where you kind of showed that you could potentially be the guy, but that's basically what everyone was saying in Chicago. And Russell Wilson in his first game, at least in your opinion, went out there and outperformed you in that first game. And like I would struggle for any team, especially the Steelers, and I would think this would be a dumb move if they're going to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to sign Justin Fields to $100 million contract." You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and I
Like
mean,
that just
if
takes too much risk.
uh, it does, but just with where the quarterback market is, I wouldn't be shocked to see $100 million over 4 years, where he's making 25 million a year. Because I don't think we're going to see any starters in the league anymore at less than $25 million at this point. It's a very far stretch to see any of them making that on a second contract now, just because of where the market's gone. Like we've got Dak Prescott making 70. We're gonna have Brock Purdy making 70. Trevor Lawrence, a lot of people are looking at him going, that's not very good, but he's making 65. Like, I think that's what we're going to see going forward. There might still be some guys right now that are making less than Daniel Jones as starters, but as we get to that next contract for them, they're not still going to be making less than Daniel Jones, is what ultimately is going to be the situation. You're going to get a cheap quarterback if you got a rookie on a rookie deal, and then that second deal, you're going to have to eclipse what Daniel Jones makes in most cases. I think this is a situation where they're going to go, you want to be here, we want you here, but we're not paying you more than 25 million, Justin.
Yeah, this is why I kind of look at this contract for Justin Fields. Is I look at Baker Mayfield. He signed a 3-year, $100 million deal with Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I looked at that and I went, that is a phenomenal deal for Baker Mayfield.
Yep.
He showed himself last year. He's shown that he can be a very, very good quarterback in this league, both with the Browns and now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I look at Justin Fields and I go, if Baker Mayfield's making an average of 28.875 million per year, I would struggle to say that the Steelers would offer him even close to that. Again, I know that's more than 25 million, and maybe I was a little too harsh saying 10. I would look at it and go maybe 15 to 20 would probably be the range for a 3-year deal, and just say,
Yeah.
like, listen, after this first season, if you play really, really well, we'll use that second season to really kind of determine if that, and then we can get you that massive, massive contract that you're potentially looking for after that second year. But yeah, like with Fields, it's just that weird situation, man.
Yep. I mean, that you're right. This is the second time he's lost his starting job to another player, and so he lost his starting job to Caleb Williams. You guys traded him
Yeah,
away,
no, fair,
and
fair
now
enough.
he's lost his starting job to Russell Wilson. So he lost one to a rookie, and he lost one to a guy that people thought should hang it up.
Yeah, I was looking at it going like, he didn't lose his job in Chicago.
I would say he did. You guys traded him away
Yep.
to draft a replacement for him. That to me is you lost your job because there was still time on your contract.
No, totally. Like, yeah, I was
Yeah.
sitting back. I was going like, did he think like Tyson Bagent got like replaced? I was like, did he forget that Fields
That was
got
due to
hurt?
injury.
Yeah.
No, I was referring to Caleb.
No, I hear you with that
Yeah.
one, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that is going to be very much talked about in next week's podcast, because the trade deadline will be pretty much right on top of us at that point. More trades will likely to be happen, and this week was kind of like we're right in the eye of the storm at the moment, or we're kind of on the outside of the eye of the storm, and we're not quite there yet. So there's less news for us to talk about. Obviously less ranty this week, but yeah, I don't really have anything much more to talk about. Make sure to check out our game picks video that came out a little bit earlier or at the end of last week on Saturday, so make sure to go check that out. But for Sterling, I'm Brendan. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment on the video, as it really helps us out. But till next time, peace.